Jennifer from Belladonna's Botanicals, and I wanted to talk a little bit. I mentioned this about in a video I just recorded. Personal places of power. Now, a lot of times in like metaphysical and occult studies, you hear people talking about like sacred places, ley lines, and geographical locations, like thinking like Stonehenge or like Machu Picchu or things like that, or that have sacred temples and or historical sites and things like that as these energetic places of power. And I started thinking about it, and yes, I agree that those can be very powerful kind of energies to channel or to work with, but not everyone can go to Stonehenge on a regular basis unless you happen to live there, or travel to the pyramids in Egypt, or go to a specific longitude and latitude that has like a magical ley line. Like I know like Sedona, Arizona is one place that has that energy. I've been there before. I don't think I spent enough time there to really kind of um connect with that energy, but it was a pretty cool place. Um However, I will say, I don't know why I'm on this subject, but I guess it was the Arizona transition, is I had no freaking idea how big the goddamn Grand Canyon was until I'm like, I had this image in my mind of what I thought the Grand Canyon looked like, oh look, it's a canyon and it's grand. I'm like, this thing is a motherfucking huge. Holy shit. I had no idea. Like the circumference of the Grand Canyon alone is like 200 and something miles. Like I remember being there, they're like, hey, you see that little white squiggly line down there on the ground? That's the Colorado River. It's very big. But yeah, so outside of that, like the known places that are energetic vortices, or an energetic vortex or vortices. um Thinking about our own personal places of power, and what got me thinking about this is that there's specific places in that show up for me repetitively in like a lot of dreams. Like my grandmother's house is one that shows up a lot of times. Occasionally my parents' house, but mostly my paternal grandparents' house shows up a lot in dream work, or in parts. Like and it'll be interacting with people who have never been there. My grandmother's been, passed away in what, 2016, I think. And my grandfather passed away almost 20 years ago. Jesus Christ. Yeah. Anyways, um, but that there's something about this space that has a personal place of power, a personal energetic vortices from that this space shows up repetitively and has for a very long time in my dreamscapes. And it's always like, it's not with people who have ever been there or that my grandparents knew, or like even sometimes like a section of like the house will show up somewhere else. And like in a recent video, I was talking about how like my grandmother's bedroom was the hotel I was staying at somewhere in New York City. So it'll show up in weird places like that. So that is one, like starting to think about personal places of power, whether they are familial residences. Like that house was built by her parents, by my great grandparents. She lived there with her two brothers and sister. I have all the family archival photos, like all the wedding photos are there from various weddings. My grandparents ended up, after everyone else kind of dispersed, they were the ones that took over owning the house. But it had been in the house. I mean, since it was built, it was in the family since maybe like the 1940s, I would guess. Maybe earlier. No, because earlier they lived in whatever, and my grandmother referred to as the Heights. I don't know where it is. I don't think it exists anymore. But anyways, so that particular location has a very powerful connection for me. And we actually lived there when we moved back from Georgia. My family lived with my grandparents for like almost a year at this location. So um that's one. One of the ones, I may have mentioned this before in other videos. In the dormant years when I wasn't really a practitioner, I kept having this particularly specific dream. It was this like occult bookstore, and one day I will own this bookstore. But it was really weird. It it was like, and I can picture where exactly it's at. I don't know, a lot of places of power in my dreams. I don't know if it's because I was a mall rat in like the late 80s and early 90s, but like a lot of places of power in my dreams are malls. Very strange. But this occult bookstore, which never existed in any mall I've ever been in, like, is almost in this liminal space. Like, I know exactly where it was, like where it would be in the space of the Lehigh Valley Mall in some sort of memory construct in my dream because I haven't actually been in the Lehigh Valley Mall since the late 90s. So don't even know what it looks like anymore. Um, but that was a particular place, and it was almost like the place where I stored all of my occult knowledge and power when I wasn't practicing for a long period of time. Um, I don't, and once I started practicing again, that I don't really go back to that place, but it was something that kept coming up over and like I could still picture it in my mind. Like, it's kind of had this like weird like entrance and all these books that go up for as far as you can see with these thick leather bound tomes and then kind of strolling towards the back. Like I could see the stuff on the counters and the way all the books and things were organized. When you went out over towards the left, there was this outdoor rooftop patio with a lot of like purple, like lavendery kind of lilac flowers. Um, so again, that became another place of power for me. So I'm starting to kind of like pay attention to those things. Like, why is this particular place coming up for me again and again? And then you start looking at things that you've connected with in your past. I was having a conversation with my younger brother earlier this week. So I'm looking to move back into my area of origin, north of, outside of Philadelphia. And I moved away like 23 years ago. Um, I don't know why, I just don't have a great muscle memory of the area I grew up in for whatever reason. But and we were ending the phone call and like, cause he's talking about different like, well, how about looking in here or in this place? I'm like, my entire geographical memory of that area is based upon based upon cemeteries I used to hang out in because I was a cemetery goth. Or where that cemetery is located. Um, it just was there was something about like I was just cracking up that like that's my entire geographical reference of where I spent most of my, life growing up is based upon all the cemetery locations. Like there's one that's actually right by my parents' house. There was one by my high school. There's one where my other grandparents are buried. There's the one up here, the one over there. Like, why is that the thing I remember and am most connected to? But that to me is telling me that those places are a place of power for me because they still exist in my memory and a lot of black and white photography from my art school days. Um, but thinking about all of those places, like things that you have a really deep personal connection to. Now the weird thing is I very rarely dream about any of the places I've physically lived in the past 20 some years. Every once in a while I'll dream about the house I lived in the suburbs, but it's not there's not a connection to them the way I had to those other places. Um and like my grandparents' house, I don't have the connection to any place I owned on my own. That it shows up as a place of power. Though I'm pretty sure this house I'm in right now is gonna be haunted as fuck after I leave. I may send like a coupon for a free exorcist. Um, yeah, I will do some complimentary energy cleansing. The house may not be physically clean when I leave, but I will at least, clear out my spirits. I'll be like, hey guys, come on, we're relocating. So I'm just kind of like I'm kind of talking myself through this a little bit as well, because, now thinking about those places of power that you're connected to, think about like the place where you got married, as if you're still married. I wouldn't consider that necessarily my place of power, although it was a beautiful arboretum. Um, but, or where something happened, whether it was impactful or traumatic or that you really have a deep connection to. Like, there are places, like, I will just literally avoid driving past them because it hurts to drive past them. Um, because of memories. Like, and that to me, like, honestly is one of the reasons that I've had a like, I don't leave the house a lot right now because every time I drive around Philadelphia, like, there's just so many memories that are encoded into every area, different blocks, memories of decades past, and I will literally just be driving up some streets, like, sobbing, um, because it's just gone. That part of my life is over. And I'm on a wild, like, connective process here, so buckle up and follow along. But, like, one of the things for me when I started doing, my ketamine treatments last fall was I kept getting this message of completion and reconnection. And I started them in September of 2022, I think. It was either September, October. But even through the first one, it was like, and I was trying to understand, like, this completion, like, I had to, like, and I was going through literally completing things like, "Okay, I'm gonna finish all those half-read books and those television shows I never finished watching," and stuff like that. Like, and because I knew I was starting to wrap something up, it just wasn't evident to me at the time what I was completing. And then also feeling, this is where the places of power come into handy, is, and I have a list somewhere I wrote down of all these places I need to go to reconnect with. It was a lot about reconnecting with my youth and reconnecting with my family, reconnecting with the area I grew up in, and it's really, like, it really, something happened also too within the process of doing um the ketamine treatments, that I did a lot of, like, inner child healing and trauma healing and stuff like that as well, that I now feel able to leave Philadelphia. I always thought I'd be a lifer here. Philadelphia has been my home. I mean, I first moved here, I lived here from 93 to 95 for college. And I moved back home briefly. Well, briefly for 5 years, but, or 6 years maybe. But I moved back here in 2000. So I've been here for 23 years. I spent 25, total of 25 years in Philadelphia, and I'm going to be 48 in a few weeks or a couple weeks. Um, But my story here is over. That's the completion. That's the completion process for me, is I had to complete my story here in Philadelphia. And and I have to reconnect with my past and reconnect with those places of power and reconnect with different, there's some trauma healing that has to happen because there's part of me that's firmly wedged somewhere in 1996, trying to desperately get out. But um I mean, that's why you've seen the recent spate of videos I've been doing of This Old Witch Journal, where I've been doing dramatic readings of some of the things I wrote back then that kind of pertain to my witchy shit. Um but it's even like re-experiencing things. Like, I have a list of, like, we used to go to Ocean City, New Jersey on vacation, like, when I was, like, growing up. I haven't been there probably since, like, 91, maybe 94. Um, so it's been a hot 30 years almost, or more. I'm not really, I never really was past that point, not really a Jersey Shore kind of person. I know it's a popular vacation destination for people who live in this area. You know, the shore points or Atlantic City. But my family always went to Ocean City, so, um, it's like every family kind of had their city they went to. It's like, "Oh, well, we're a Wildwood family," or "We're a Cape May family." That's kinda like the bougie, Shore Point. "No, we're Avalon." Anywho, geographical snobbery aside, but that was one of the things, and there's part of me that needs to reconnect with that. So that's kind of on my big list of things to do in my reconnecting future. Um, there's, like I mentioned, with all the cemeteries and places that I from my past when I lived in that area to reconnect with. I did God, I guess this is during the pandemic, but back in 2020 my dad had um a pacemaker put in. And because it was during, you know, that time in 2020, it was a little later, it was like around August or September. But like my mom was the only one who could wait with him in the hospital because of the visitor, couldn't have visitors and stuff like that. So I just had time to kill while I was waiting for him to have these procedures. They were all same day. So I there was a cemetery um, by the library that I used to always go to that I love. I have some really beautiful photographs from there. And we used to always go and watch the fireworks during Music Fest, which is this big like this festival that like week or 2 week long festival thing that happens in Bethlehem, PA. But to watch fireworks there and other things seen, missing. Anywho, but I went to visit this place for the first time. I couldn't even tell it. Well, I guess maybe I'd say like the last time I was there was maybe 98 or 99. But I still had like I could tell you I walked through that cemetery. I actually may have like a video of it. I'd have to I think I did like a Facebook live of me walking through the cemetery, but like I found all my favorite places in the cemetery that I hadn't been to in like 20 some years at that point. And it was that was I think maybe the first point of reconnection there for me. But there's other places that I want to reconnect with, like we used to like I would love, and it sounds like corny, and especially with stuff that's going on, not that I necessarily want to go to Florida anytime soon, but like, some of the better vacations I remember having with my family, as we got my brother and I got older, was we went to like the Disney World kind of area. Disney World itself was my least favorite of it. I liked Epcot and some of the other ones, but SeaWorld, however, yes, Mr. Walrus who spit on me in 1991, I still am holding that grudge. Cause ew. You ever get spit on by a walrus? I've been spit on by a walrus. Not only have I been spit on by a walrus, but once a giraffe licked my boob. Technically, that was my fault. I was asking for it. I didn't hold the food the fronds of whatever we were feeding them behind my back when we were in San Diego, and I had them in the front. And the giraffe was like, "Wow." Anyways, weird shit happens to me. Just roll with it. Yeah. Sorry. But anyways, it's just there's part of me that wants to reconnect with that. Like I would love to go to like Disney World, especially now that I have, my eldest nephew is 25 now, which is just kind of mind blowing. But like I would love to go there with all my family. I don't know how this would be possible, but it's a lot of moving parts. But it's just there's part of me that has this desire to reconnect with these places. Um Now, I wouldn't necessarily consider Disney World to be a place of power for me per se, but um, it's about the reconnection process for me. So once I figured out the completion of my time here in Philadelphia, um, I had recently decided that, before I make my, you know, throw the keys over the shoulder with the burning car in the background exit of Philadelphia, middle fingers blazing, um, that I want to visit all my favorite places that still exist. Sadly, a lot of them don't anymore. Um, I want to visit all my favorite places again in Philadelphia. one last time to finish the story, that part of the story, because my story is unfinished. And I don't know what the next chapters will look like, how I will reconnect, how I'll form new connections. I am definitely ready for my Witch in the Woods story arc. Let's just put it at that. But so I guess to try to weave this random car chase of random thoughts and experiences and, a walrus spitting on me, um, into something cohesive and intelligible that you can all sort of, uh to give you some takeaways from it is to look at your personal places of power. Look at where you can connect to. Like I can tell you the one place in Philad or the one residence I've had in Philadelphia that I connect with the most was my first apartment at 12th and Pine, in on Antique Row in what we affectionately call the Gayborhood. Um, Although it was I'm pretty sure my $500 a month apartment now is probably a $2,500 a month apartment, but like that for me kind of encapsulates a certain like energetic vortices for me because that's kind of where I really started doing my first, like that's where I really started getting into my magic in that space. Now I did stuff before that when I lived at home, but that's where I really kind of got into it. um so it's just kind of looking at the places that I connect to here, um and seeing them one last time. Although I'm very disgruntled about the current state of the Mutter Museum, but that is a story for another time. Um, TLDR, new management who's afraid of cancel culture, and apparently, anatomy is icky. It's a medical museum. What do you think you're going to get? Candy? I mean, you could get some cool candy though. But anyways, um, so think about in your lives, since multiple people will probably watch this over time. Um, what are the places you feel connected to as your personal places of power, as your sacred spaces, as your energetic vortices, someplace that you draw great power from? Whether it be a familial home, whether it be a particular location. Um, so think about that. Now, if these places are accessible to you, I would say find something that you can connect to that. Like after my grandmother passed, we sold the family home, but nothing to stop me from stealing a little bit of dirt from there somewhere, from it slopes down the hills and like anyways. Nothing illegal to see here. Or, obviously a lot of us have graveyard dirt from places like that. So having something, even if it's just a photograph or something tangible that can connect you to that spot, um, that can be, you could start interweaving that energy into your magical practice, whether it be part of like an astral temple or a dreamscape, or something that is in a physical ritual. Because if you take something like, if like at my parents' house, I could take a brick from their backyard or something, or a rock, um, you know, to have that as a connective kind of energetic point to work with. So thinking about your places of power, that you've encountered throughout courses of your life. And I'm not talking necessarily about Stonehenge or Dracula's castle because you can't really steal anything from there. And I've heard there's lots of YouTube videos that's like, of people that like take things from a lot of these sites and then they mail them back like, we have had such bad luck that we think we're cursed, so you can have this back now. Um, so, and I've heard some stories about that too. Um, anyways, from friends who have done things like that, and results varied. But anyways, So that's just kind of a random aside that I wanted to go into of how we can work with energy in our practices based on our own histories and the things we've experienced in our lives. And on that note, I'm out. Love y'all and have a wonderful evening. Don't forget to click like, subscribe, smash the notification bell, blah, blah, blah. Love y'all.